Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. It's time. We are through 1 year of Sherrone Moore taking over this Michigan program. How do you grade him out? And I think when you go about grading head coaches, especially early in the tenure, you probably want to look at a couple of different categories. So that's how we're going to do it. As a Michigan fan, I might be easy on him in some categories versus some other coaches across the country, but I want to get into how you evaluate the overall year one experience of Sherrone Moore taking over this Michigan program. Now, the funny part about this conversation is you could poll me at different times over the last 12 months and I give you a couple of different answers. But sitting here after one full year, let's get into the grades before we do. And as always, to the Michigan fans, one, the amount of support y'all have shown the boys over the last couple of weeks and months has been absolutely amazing. Although it was a disappointing 2024 season to Michigan standards, the last month and a half talking this Michigan team, absolute blast. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, Michigan fans, let it fly in the comment section. Dill, we've probably had this conversation probably 30 times over the last 2 months in terms of how we evaluate Sherrone Moore. Getting the answer has looked different from time to time. Let's get into it. Let's start with category number one, right? And what matters the most, on-field play. Michigan finishes 8-5. They finish on an absolute heater. What's the letter grade you're giving Sherrone Moore in terms of what this Michigan program looked like on the field in 2024?
I mean, on-field performance strictly, it's got to be something like a B minus, a B, something like that. Because I look like you can't go 8-5 and lose to teams like Washington and Illinois. Like I would have been okay losing to teams like Oregon, Texas, even Ohio State, perhaps. But you can't lose. Like after that Illinois game, that's about as low as I've been on this Michigan program, probably since.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I was that low in 2020. And 2020 was really bad.
I think I was a little lower in 2020.
I was down. I was like, what's going on? How are we losing this game? But the way that team kind of finished up, and frankly, the player development over the course of the season, I thought was really strong, especially on the defense side of the ball, and frankly, the offensive line as well. Now, the issue is they just were so off on the quarterback spot that it didn't matter what else was going on. It just Michigan didn't give themselves a chance. In a lot of different factors with that. Jim Harbaugh's like, will he, won't he with the NFL certainly hurt the recruiting for the last couple of years. Yeah. Their inability to really hit the portal in the winter.
Because that's where I'm almost giving him a slide. You know, like when you
make I can take a slide to an extent, but like you probably can't put out what they put out because
and especially like you went through all spring practice with these guys. Like after spring practice, there were maybe some quarterbacks you could have added. I give him a B. It's generous because 8-5 is not the standard at Michigan, especially coming off an undefeated national championship. Outside of the quarterback play, the on-field play was the offensive line struggled early, which as Michigan fans in hindsight probably should have expected a little bit when you have to replace every single starter on the offensive line from the 2023 year. This team got a lot better going through the 2024 year. The quarterback play falls at the feet of Sherrone Moore, and that's why you're getting graded out as a B. But there were a lot of other positive aspects from this Michigan team on the field in 2024. Going to recruiting. This is what, as a Michigan fan, I personally am most excited about. Project number one for Sherrone Moore since he took over this program. We saw him starting to build the infrastructure 12 months ago when he got the job. It was, hey, this is a Michigan team that was coming off 3 straight Big Ten championships, beating Ohio State 3 straight times, coming off a national championship, but it never felt like the recruiting kind of followed the on-field results. I think Sherrone Moore looked at this program and said, all right, it's like arguably the biggest brand name that you see in the entire country. Obviously great education, huge alumni base. This team should be recruiting at a higher level than we were under Jim Harbaugh. It almost seemed like a little antiquated from Jim. Sherrone Moore's revolutionized it, and you feel it building. Obviously, with Bryce Underwood, potentially Ty Haywood, Michigan's operating at a different level on the recruiting trail. There's nothing else you can give but an A in this category.
Yeah, I was gonna say A plus because I don't know how I could have more energy in terms of what this Michigan program is doing on the trail. I mean, to go win out for Bryce Underwood and kind of repair that relationship and make it work for, again, those type of guys that just you shouldn't see leaving the state of Michigan. But for him to go beat out everyone else in the country, to kind of take that battle, huge. Obviously, to win for Babalola, beat Auburn out.
The Bryce one, it kind of signifies what Sherrone's trying to do. It's like put all the force and power of this Michigan program behind that recruitment. I mean, it was all the stops. There's Sherrone Moore personally doing it. It was Tom Brady getting on FaceTimes before Bryce Underwood rode the school bus to school. Like, us maximizing that type of stuff, that's what I love. I do have a question. Transfer portal, not grabbing a wide receiver or not grabbing a difference maker at wide receiver for Bryce going into 2025. Is that a knock, or like, how do you feel about that?
It is definitely a knock. I mean, frankly, I do think there's probably an element of Michigan needing to put something on the field that this place where wideouts can thrive, because that is ultimately, if you're going to land difference makers in the portal, it's got to be a place where they can go from probably one portion of the draft to the next portion of the draft. And right now, if I'm a wide receiver looking at Michigan, I'd probably want to see a proof of concept before I kind of put my future in the hands of that program. So this will be a big year for Chip Lindsey, Bryce Underwood, like that offense, to really prove that it's going to be different. And you heard Sherrone Moore saying some things last year about it being different. I mean, pretty early on in the season, Michigan fans, I think, knew, like, oh, well, we don't have the quarterback to be that much different. We actually are taking a monster step backwards. But this will be a huge year for those two, Chip Lindsey, Bryce Underwood. Can they prove that this is an offense?
I kind of agree, and I know a lot of Michigan fans, and I fall under that category too. Like, I left this transfer portal window disappointed that we didn't land what I think is a real difference maker. And I do like Donovan McCulley, but I kind of wanted another tier up. It's really the only knock that
you did
really
see
had.
You saw good wideouts. So
that was the frustrating part.
Have the other positions I think they would have wanted, they for the most part hit.
Agreed.
So I'm not like I mean, maybe to an extent a little bummed.
The frustrating part. Sorry, I'm gonna get grilled in the comment section for interrupting. I'll say what I say now that I've already interrupted. Because of how many good wide receivers we saw hit the portal, that's what probably stung the most. Is I kept seeing good wide receivers hit the portal, and it never really seemed like Michigan made a huge effort.
Like mediocre teams, for lack of a better term, like going to UCLA or teams that I'm like, oh, why are we not winning these battles?
Or why are we not even getting in those battles? Is probably the question I would ask. But I mean, in general, you know how you want to build a program. You build it through the high school ranks, and Michigan is clearly doing that. A for recruiting, long-winded answer. Dill, another really important that I continue to stress, this is probably the most under-talked about way to evaluate coaches. Do they hire a good staff around you? Like Nick Saban. What made him? Nick Saban was a very, very good football coach that recruited very well. But part of the reason he recruited very well and part of the reason he had so much success was you look at the staffs he had, like elite staff year after year after year. Michigan had to pretty much revamp the whole entire coaching staff when Jim left. How do you evaluate the staffing hires for this Michigan program?
I'm probably going to go B+, and the only reason is he worked so hard on Kirk Campbell.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost unfathomable to me how he thought that was going to work out as the offensive coordinator. So I like everyone else, obviously, Wink Martindale. That's almost such a huge hire because it kept this team from really kind of hitting the wall, if you will. Like, imagine how many games they would have lost if they didn't have a really kind of top-notch D coordinator in my mind. So I think huge hit with him, huge hit with Lamar Morgan. I think he might be the future defensive coordinator for this Michigan program. So I love what they did with him. But yeah, when you miss that hard at the offensive coordinator spot, it's hard to give you a better grade. I mean, everything else I like, but
it's hard to know. Well, I think you kind of know. The offense was it was very boring, very, very not creative. Yeah, I gave him an A-, which is probably a little bit because I think he got a lot of hires right. And the Kirk Campbell hire was a little bit of a continuity hire where the bullets were flying, man. Like there was so much going on with this Michigan program. And even hindsight, like how we talked about Kirk Campbell getting the job, we said, makes sense. Like continuity, we want to keep the good thing rolling. And obviously you look at hindsight, you look at the resume and say, all right, that hire was probably not great. Everywhere else, and Grant Newsome is getting heat on the offensive line. I thought that offensive line got significantly better as time went on. And so I look at the rest, and then Wink, man, if the way that defense played, and there were some growing pains early, but the way that defense played in November, if you get him back one more year, and look, I know Wink's not staying for 10 years. I know that. But you get him back for one more year, this defense is going in the right direction. I give him an A-. You missed bad on Kurt Campbell. And I guess one other thing to add here, Dylan, I know I'm kind of rambling here. I love the off-the-field stuff. Sean Maggie, he revolutionized the front office in the recruiting staff as well, which matters when you're trying to win at the highest level. Last but not least, arguably the most important, vibes trajectory as a Michigan fan yourself, Dill. Where are the vibes at, grade-wise?
Yeah, and this is the one that fluctuated. I mean, I was, I said it, like after Illinois, I was about as, that was not, I was down. I was
I got on after that Illinois. I just fired one up and just ranted.
I couldn't even do it. I was so sad. I'm like, I can't talk into this microphone. And I don't know what to say. I was so hurt by that. And then obviously the end of the year, you go beat Ohio State, you go beat Alabama, you go pull some big time recruiting wins in the month of December. It was just an unbelievable kind of end. So yeah, I'm riding about as high as I've been probably since that 2023 season where it was championship or bust and they made it happen. So yeah, they got me back into this.
Yeah, the vibes are A for me too. Like look at what you're doing on the recruiting trail. Look at the player retention too, like some really big names coming back. And then look at what this team did at the end of the year. I mean, they went on the road in a rivalry game and beat the national champs. And then you go play Alabama in the bowl game where Alabama was pretty damn full strength and Michigan didn't have Mason Graham and didn't have Colson Loveland, didn't have Kenny Graham, Will Johnson. And Michigan goes out and wins that football game too. I have a ton of confidence in terms of where this program is going over the next couple of years. That'll do it. I'm excited. We're going to kind of obviously big story, a lot of storylines to follow over the next couple of weeks for this Michigan program. We're going to be breaking it down. Appreciate you guys rocking with it again. To the Michigan fans, it's been a blast for the boys to talk this program, and the support means the world. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.